In this lesson, we will look at how you can use Storybook in a Create React app application to work with and demo your React components in isolation. If you are new here, subscribe for more content like this, and with that said, let's go. We create a new Create React app application called Example using the TypeScript template. The command we're using here is also shown on screen, and now once the installation is complete, we can cd into the directory and open it up in our IDE. Now the base Create React app doesn't come with any components worthy of a component playground, so we will create our own component for a button under the components folder. This component will intentionally be very simple. We will style it using CSS module support built into Create React app. It has a prop for an event handler and a prop for a styling variant, and we will use the CSS module to get the class name for a button and a class name for the variant that's passed in. We will create these CSS class names shortly in the next step. Next, we wire up the native button to use these concatenated class names. And for the onClick, we optionally invoke the onClick we grabbed from the props. That's it for the logic. Let's jump to styling using CSS modules, using the class name for the button, primary and secondary. We create the CSS module file for the button component, and we create a base class for all buttons, putting in some nice padding, removing the default border, giving a nice border radius, and using the hand cursor. For focus, we'll use a CSS outline, so we set up an outline offset, an outline style, and an outline width. The primary variant is now just a tweak on the colors for the foreground, background, and outline, and the same is true for the secondary variant. So now we have a component. If we wanted to play around with it, we'd have to add it to our application, and then you jump into application routing and architecture. So fortunately, we can avoid all that by using Storybook. Adding Storybook to the project is super easy using the Storybook CLI. We use npx to use the package Storybook CLI to run the command sp, passing in the argument init. This will actually notice that we are using Create React app and set up our project all the way to get cracking. Now let's look at the modifications it's made to our example application. First up, in our package.json, it's added a script for Storybook, which we can use to work with Storybook during development. And then there is a script build Storybook to work with Storybook in a production environment. This will bundle everything up so we can deploy the folder to some static site hosting so people can play around with our components on the internet. We will look at both these scripts towards the end of this lesson. In terms of packages, it's added everything that it needs into our dev dependencies, so we don't have to install anything else. Now it also adds this configuration file under .storybook main.js. Within this configuration, you can see that any files with .stories.js is going to become a part of the final Storybook. Since we are using TypeScript, we will modify it to be stories.tsx. And since it's using the Create React app preset, that's all we need to do for TypeScript support. An interesting fact is that Storybook itself is actually built with TypeScript. The third thing that the init command added is some example stories. We'll be creating our own story for the button using TypeScript, so we'll just delete these default ones. Now we create our button stories in the file button.stories.tsx. Within the file, we set up our stories to use React, bring in the action add-on, which allows us to log user actions into the Storybook UI and the components we are making the story for. Export default is used to provide the overall configuration for all of the stories within this file. We will use two simple stories, one for the primary button using the primary variant, and one for the secondary button using the secondary variant. We also wire up the onClick of both of these stories to log clicked to the actions panel in the Storybook UI, which we will look at shortly. That's it for the code. Now to play around with these stories during development, we can run npm run storybook as was configured within the script section in our package.json. Once this command warms up, it opens up the browser with the Storybook UI. We can navigate to the individual stories and click around and see the actions getting logged. If we were to make any modifications to the code, this Storybook will reload. Now when you are happy with the components and want to send them over the internet for someone else to play with, you can build a static folder using npm run build storybook. This was also configured in our package.json scripts. This creates the folder Storybook Static, which we can publish to some static host like S3 or Now or Surge, And we can see what the experience will look like by serving up this folder locally using npx serve. If we navigate to localhost 5000, you can see that it is very similar to the live version we saw previously. And that's all for this lesson on adding and using Storybook to work with React components in a Create React App application. Smash that like and subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.